Artificial intelligence is changing how we write, imagine, and create. From generating poems to helping with writer's block, AI is now part of the creative process. It also raises big questions about originality, ownership, and the future of human creativity. Is AI an enemy of art or a new source of inspiration? Welcome to Youth Connect on Trust TV. I am Fatima Ahmed, and thank you so much for joining us. Now let's go on a quick break. I won't return. You get to meet my guest. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now today we are talking about AI in creative writing, and it's Muhammadu Liman, a talented writer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for having me back again. It's great to be here.
I mean, I'm glad and delighted to have you join us on Youth Connect once again. It's been a while though, but then I'm happy to have you here. So we're talking AI and how it's shaping how we write, imagine, and create from my introduction. Yes. Have you used AI, and what has AI done to your writing so far?
Well, first of all, before I even answer that, I think it's important to understand what AI is and what the creative writing process also entails. If you think of AI in layman's terms, you're looking at a device that's capable of machine learning, which means that it accepts data, recognizes patterns, and then it can make its own decisions without explicit programming. Now, when you add that to the creative writing process, you get a very unique result, because people feel like creative writing is just you form a story in your head and then you write the story down. But there are actually so many other things that go into it. You know, understanding thematic structure, understanding character development, choosing your story beats. And many of these things can be challenging for new writers to grasp. And so when you have AI, it can become a tool for you to improve your writing. And you asked me, how have I personally used AI? That's a great question. For me, AI has always been a way to, because for somebody who's not necessarily a beginner anymore, AI has always been a way for me to fine-tune some of the more technical aspects of writing. You know, grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, and a lot of times consultations are also useful. Okay, this is what I'm writing. What do you think? As opposed to this certain theme that I'm trying to represent, how do you feel like it works? And the AI recognizes patterns. It looks through other books, it understands other authors, and then it gives you constructive feedback. And I think that's the most significant way that AI has helped my writing.
Well, I'm impressed to see that, you know, it has helped you improve in some aspects of your writing, like you rightly mentioned. But is AI a creative partner or a threat to human originality? Because we are talking about, you know, having the original part of you being a writer, and then also the AI also helping. So is it a threat to originality?
Well, I think this is one of those questions that depends on who you ask. There are many traditionalists who feel like technology is getting in the way of true artistic brilliance and everything should come from you. But then there are those who still feel that, okay, we've evolved globally. You know, this is where we are as a civilization. We have a tool like AI, and why not use it, you know? So to me, I think AI opens barriers for people. You know, it helps people enter the writing space. It's a very efficient tool, a consultant, an application you can use for yourself as a writer.
But can AI truly capture human emotions, feelings, especially when it comes to writing either poems or stories?
That's a brilliant question, and the answer to it is one of the reasons I feel that AI isn't a threat to creativity. Because what AI does, as we previously discussed, is it looks at data, it looks at previous works to determine what it will give you back. And so AI is an imitation of human emotion, not necessarily human emotion itself. And I'll give you a great example. Let's say you ask AI to write you a market woman. The AI will look through the news, it will look through different stories of other authors to write you what it believes a market woman in Nigeria should be. But you, as a writer who has been to the market, you've looked at market women, maybe you've met some, and perhaps you've met a market woman who every time she laughs, she scratches her nose. That's something you put into your writing to give your characters depth. It might seem like a small detail, but these are the things that bring your story to life and the things that AI can't do for you.
So, but a lot of many young writers, especially upcoming writers, because you have been in the field for a while, so definitely. But a lot of young writers use AI to polish their work. Do you think that improves their skills or it makes them more lazy?
I think it improves their skills, because when you're learning something new, one of the most important things you need is feedback. You need somebody who has done what you're doing to be able to tell you, do this way, adjust this, change this a little bit, so that you yourself can improve. And when you don't have that, of course, you might still improve, but it will just take you maybe months or years to discover some of the things that AI will give you in perhaps the first week or the second week of you learning how to write.
So, but some say AI takes away the struggle that makes writing real. Do you agree that struggle is part of the creative journey?
I know there's a struggling artist stereotype of, an artist going through the harshness of life and then using that as inspiration for their writing. And while in its own sense that's beautiful and poetic, I don't think that's the only place to draw inspiration. I don't think you have to go through hardship to be a good writer. You can be a writer in your living room if you have the ideas and if you're naturally inclined towards writing.
But what are those things that you feel AI cannot do that only humans can actually do when it comes to, using AI as a friend when you are creating, as a tool to enhance and what have you? What do you think it's something that young people should actually look into to see how it can also enhance their creativity?
The thing about AI is, as we all know, almost ruthlessly logical. It uses patterns and it gives you a probabilistic answer to give you what it thinks will be the best answer. But at the end of the day, it's still not a human being. It still doesn't understand human emotions. It can only imitate or represent them. You, who is a person, you understand people differently from the AI. And as a writer, it's your job to do better than the AI in that aspect. Otherwise, why are you writing?
So, do you think when people use AI, they can actually lose their authenticity and originality to using AI as a tool?
To be honest, I have to say yes. At the end of the day, we're all still human. And it's easy to become too comfortable when you're using AI, to feel that the AI can write for you. And sometimes that stifles your own originality and your own creativity. But what you have to remember is that you're writing because you like to write. Writing there isn't $1 million in becoming a writer. So people who write are people who feel inspired, people who want to deliver their message. And you should always remember that that's what you want to do. And so the AI can only help you do that. If the AI is doing that for you, then you've kind of lost your way a little bit.
And there's the fear of AI probably reserving languages, our dying languages or indigenous languages. Do you think that it can actually help preserve some of our languages, especially when we're using some of these AI apps?
I think it's very possible, especially because AI is continuously learning. So even if the language is dying, it's still being updated with the little information it's getting. Meaning that at the end of the day, the language it has stored will always be there. You can always look back to AI as a reference.
So what about trusting AI to tell your personal story or cultural story?
That's where you might have a problem. The idea of trusting AI generally. Because people think AI is infallible, and that's very much not the case. Your AI can be wrong. Your AI can be a gateway for a company to get information about you. Your AI there are so many ways in which it can be destructive to you, and it's your responsibility to sieve out those from the positive benefits.
So what does the future of creative writers using AI looks like to you?
I think, to be honest, you can side with the traditionalists and say the stories might be less authentic. You might end up having situations where writers are using AI and maybe the AI is just giving them a repetition of other stories it has seen. But I personally think that AI will create better stories because there are so many raw writers who take so long to go through the process of learning how to write. Some even give up. But with AI creating that shortcut for them, being a consultant, being a mentor, it gives a lot of writers a larger stepping stone from which they can put out their stories.
Can AI ever replace the human experience behind great literature?
You can never say, because AI as it is now obviously can't replace human beings, but it's constantly improving. They're making it better, they're improving how it responds, how it learns. And so it's possible that AI might even become better writers than people themselves. But then I think as somebody who appreciates literature, you always want to read the experiences of real people as opposed to something written by a machine.
So, but if you're to mentor a young writer, would you encourage them to use AI to learn or to avoid using it at all so that they can grow naturally?
I think it depends on what your goals are. You know, there are people who are extremely serious about writing, and there are people who write as a passion. If you're very serious, you need a lot of feedback and a lot of practice. For example, when I was learning, every morning when I woke up, I would make sure I wrote a short story. And at the time, AI wasn't so popular, so I didn't have the feedback I needed. It would have to be me writing the story, looking at it, comparing with other writers. But with AI, you write your short story, you put it into AI, it gives you all the feedback you need. Tomorrow when you sit down to write again, you already have all the corrections, you already have all the information.
So, but what are the gains and losses of using AI, especially when writing storytelling?
I think the biggest one would have to be what I spoke about already. Writing is a creative field, it's a field of passion, it's something people do because they want to understand or appreciate life through alternate perspectives. And you can only capture that when human beings are the ones writing, sharing experiences, or trying to show you their interpretation of circumstances. When you have a machine doing that, even if the stories are nice, you lose the true essence of writing. And so, yes.
So if you're, as a writer, would you use AI to write most of your stories now that we know that it can actually help in telling stories, even if it's not going to look at the human aspect of it, like when we talked about the emotions, heartbreaks, feeling the feelings of human? Will you use it in your own writing? And how many % will you use AI to do your writing?
Well, you know, like I said, AI is an imitation, but sometimes the imitation is quite accurate. So you can still use AI in your writing. It's just you have to get to a space where you're good enough to know where the AI is accurate and where it isn't, where you really need your own human experiences, and maybe where the AI can fill in the gaps for you. So for me, yes, of course, I see it as a tool that's available to me, and I will use it. So
for upcoming writers that probably want to start writing and probably use it as a career, because we see people like Wole Soyinka, Chune Achebe, and the rest being writers, aside from other things that they do. Do you think if they start writing and using AI, it will have the value, the storytelling of the AI will have value like the human writing the stories and having values like we see?
For startup writers, I encourage them to use AI for feedback. I encourage them to still think about the story as coming from them, because it's your own authenticity and originality that makes you a great writer. So yes, useful tool. I think it has a lot of value as long as you hold on to the core idea that I am the writer and I'm writing because I enjoy writing and I want to show people something in my writing.
Do you think AI will someday win in a competition where probably people use AI to tell their stories or probably write their poems, you know, even plays? Do you think AI will one day win a competition when it comes to literature or anything that has to do with filming and the rest?
I think someday...
In terms of storytelling?
In terms of storytelling. I think someday it will be possible. For now, I don't think so. Even though you already have AI beating people at chess and all those kind of board games. But I think someday when the AI is able to understand different perspectives and craft its own story, input its own messaging, then yeah, you might have situations where, because you have to remember that the AI is an expert from the beginning. You who is a beginner writer, you can't really compete with it. But at the higher level of writing, I think there's nothing that will be able to imitate the originality of human written books.
All right, let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this discussion. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, before we went on break, we are discussing AI and how it's shaping the future of writers, especially. But if AI can write poems and novels, what then becomes the role of future writers, especially young ones coming up?
Well, you have to think of it as what I said previously. You have the true essence of creativity. People want to feel the connection with what they're reading or what they're listening to or what they're watching. And I think it's in the same way that you have AI music. If somebody brings you a song that was created by an AI, okay, it sounds like the artist, but it's not the same, because you know that it wasn't written or performed by that specific artist. It's not their original work. So the connection is a little bit different. And in that same sense, when AI writes a book or writes a poem, it can be great. Objectively, you can appreciate it. Even as somebody who likes literature, you can appreciate it. But it's never the same as one written by a person, because you know that the person puts so much experience, so much emotions behind it. You know that these are their real thoughts that you can relate to, thoughts that might maybe guide you. Whereas an AI is just writing almost emotionlessly, sometimes without a real understanding of, because AI will only study information that's available, perspectives of people, rather than creating its own unique perspective, which is what makes writing great.
So if AI starts writing better than some human writers, does that mean we need to redefine what talent means?
I think at that point, then perhaps we need to redefine what talent is. And maybe that's what traditionalists don't like. They don't like the idea that you can use AI as a shortcut and be on the same level as somebody who's writing naturally or who's creating their art naturally. But at the same time, there shouldn't be that kind of an obstacle. It shouldn't be that you can't use AI to develop yourself or use AI to correct your writing. It's the same way that technology brings out the highest level of efficiency in human beings. You can't tell somebody that, oh, if you want to travel, don't use an aeroplane, use a boat, because boat is how, or go and walk, because walking is how we've been going to places before. No, we've evolved past that. We've reached a point where technology can bring out the best in us. And in that sense, yes, maybe talent should be redefined. Maybe it should be a case of your understanding of writing matters more, or your ideas that you have, your raw talent, as opposed to even the higher understanding or the technical know-how of putting your ideas down into paper and representing what you want to represent.
When it comes to using AI, do you think of how the ownership and copyright is going to be like, especially if you're using AI as the main writer for you, instead of using your own knowledge and probably using AI to enhance it, but you're using just AI to write novels, to write plays? Do you think the issue of ownership and copyright is something that we should look into?
Yes, that's a very good one. And I think that's a massive issue for writers to look out for when they're using AI, which is why initially I said as a startup writer, you shouldn't rely on AI to write for you. It should be a feedback tool. Because as an established writer, you can use AI to write a little bit and you will understand that, okay, maybe this has been written somewhere, or perhaps this isn't original. But if as a startup writer, you're already doing that, you will definitely run into issues of copyright. Why? Because the AI is learning from things that already exist. It's taking inspiration and then changing things that people have already written to give you what it feels like will be the best result for you. And so when that happens, there are lots of instances where the AI will produce a piece of writing for you that's painfully similar to something someone else has already written. And then what does that do to your credibility as a writer?
Yeah.
What does that say about the creative writing process? What does that say about our entire profession, our art of writing? So I encourage people to definitely watch out for things like that.
So, but should there be ethical rules about how much of a story can be written by AI?
Should there be ethical rules? I think there has to be. Of course, you can't just input an idea and have the AI write you a novel. That's unethical to the highest degree. But I think there should be a degree of allowance to which you can use AI, because, like I said, it's technology. It's a tool. We've come here in our lifespan as a civilization, as a human civilization. So we're at the point where people can use AI to improve their writing. People can use AI to be better. And as I said before, it brings out the best in you as a writer, because it refines your ideas. It gives you constant feedback. It gives you consultation. Things that maybe you would have had to go and meet another writer to teach you, things that you would have spent months, things that, like I said, when I was learning, I would have to read different authors, compare their writing styles, compare to mine, see what I can do better. But with AI, you've circumvented all of that. You know, it teaches you all those core things all at once. So yes, you know.
So, but do you think the future generation will care whether poems, movies, scripts, plays are being written by AI, as far as it connects with them emotionally?
There's a risk of that. You know, you can never say there's no risk of that. But I think one thing that human beings have shown is that no matter how much we advance in technology, there's always a need for connection. Human beings are social beings, and we don't only connect in person. We connect through writing, through media, through poetry. People will always seek out that connection. You know, and one of the reasons I think writing appeals to a lot of people is because you might be in your home, your environment, your community, and you find that the ideas you have aren't relatable to the life you're living, or people don't understand the ideas you have. But maybe you read one writer somewhere who has been through something you have been through, and their characters show what you're going through, or they reflect the same ideas that you have. And that's what draws people to writing. And I think that will never die. You know, I'm very confident that people will always seek out that connection, seek out that similar understanding to be able to appreciate the art of writing itself.
So, but what do you think the government should do at this point? Because it's definitely going to be used in schools, it's going to be used in workplaces. How do you think the government can come in to regulate the use of AI, especially in terms of probably using it for storytelling, or using it to tell, using it in schools, especially probably universities, tertiary, schools. How do you think the government can actually regulate the use of AI?
I think the government has a massive role, you know, not only just in regulation, but also in promoting the use of AI. You know, digitization in education is one aspect that Nigeria is sorely lacking in. You know, we don't have enough advanced technology in classrooms for kids to learn from. And if the government does well to promote that first and then bring out the highest potential of those students, then we can think about how can the government regulate to create a level playing field between students, between students and writers. But on the other hand, I feel that even if the government doesn't regulate, the market will naturally regulate itself. And let me explain why I feel that way. If you're a good writer and I'm a bad writer and we both write 2 stories, yours will be better than mine. But if we do that again and I use AI and you don't, my story might be as good as yours. But when we get to the point where everybody is using AI, then what becomes the major separator? It still becomes your skill as a writer, your own ability to write, your own ability to craft stories, to introduce your thematic structures, to introduce your characters, to pass the message you want to pass.
So, do you agree with the fear of a lot of people saying AI is going to displace a lot of people, especially teachers and even some staff in some organizations, because there are some jobs that AI can actually literally do that doesn't need human to do those jobs? Do you agree with that too?
I actually agree that it's very possible AI will eventually do the jobs that a lot of people can do, you know, because to give you another example, of course, I'm a writer. I love writing, it's my passion, but I also work as a contractor. And so as a general contractor, you end up meeting projects in different types of industries. And one of the things I love to do is to just go on AI, do quick research, and it gives you so much technical expertise that you might need to go and ask an expert for. And so in that sense, you're already seeing that people are being replaced, because if I can just ask AI, why will I pay you thousands of dollars for a consultation? You know, if AI will just do that for me from the go. So yes, there's a risk of AI taking people's jobs. And, you know, that's where the government has to come in and regulate to say that, okay, you know, this is how much we can use AI. This is how AI needs to be used in these industries. But then you have to ask yourself as well, in a country where they don't have problems of maybe, you know, shortage of or too much unemployment, and then they are able to use AI while still having the number of jobs they have, how do we stop them from getting ahead of us? You know, if we say we must regulate AI, but they are saying, yeah, we'll use AI, nobody will be out of a job, the AI will just help us. How do we then compete with them? And I think these are the complex questions that the government has to answer.
I mean, I would have loved to say if you can advise young people to stay original and true to themselves when they are writing, what would you say?
Yes, one of the things I'll say is, as a young person in Nigeria, there's a temptation to think only about money, to think only about the success, the potential uplifting of your own career. But then there's still an avenue for you to remember that you enjoy doing this. Not everything has to be laser focused on efficiency to the point where you must rely on AI to write your stories. You're doing this because you enjoy it. You like writing, you feel that you are a writer in your heart, and you should always stay true to that. There's so many tools you can learn from other writers. You can use AI, you can enter competitions. There's so many ways to improve your writing, but just always remember that you're a writer because you enjoy being a writer.
Well, thank you so much, Muhammadu Liman, for taking your time to be on the show today.
Thank you so much as well for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, AI can help with words, but it can't help how our hearts feel. True creativity comes from human experience, using AI as a tool, not your voice. The world still needs stories from human souls. Well, if you enjoyed this conversation today, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channels and follow us on all our social media platforms. I'm Fatima Ahmed Musa. Thanks for watching.